All right, why don't we get started for today? It's Friday. So we're gonna do a couple things. I'm gonna spend the first half hour looking at a review problem. You're welcome to look at that review problem or any of the other review problems. And then the second half hour class, I'm gonna get you started on the assignment there. And you're welcome if you want to get started. If you think you're ready to work on the assignment right away, you're welcome to get started on that. The review problems you don't have to turn in, of course, or anything like that. So you can decide what you want to do. Let's start with a couple announcements. I posted a couple announcements here. One is I was updating the list of internships. Again, I maintain a spreadsheet here of internships and entry-level jobs, and every few weeks I post a new tab of jobs here. And I was just particularly struck this year of Excel Energy among a couple other groups announced jobs, and the number of them are open to first and second year students. I know often I get asked by students in this class, are there any internships? So there are numbers. So I kind of filtered those, and here these are the ones in the most recent list that are kind of open. Some of them specifically to first and second year students, and some of them they just don't say, and so they can be open there. There's a couple you know, kind of more generic things. And that's something to watch is look for companies, particularly big companies that offer things like Microsoft offers a number of different programs, and one is called Explore Microsoft program. And that again is open to first and second year students, if I remember correctly, and just get you kind of interested and involved in Microsoft and that company there. And some of these just have like an early career area where you can post and get more information. They may not have the internship listed yet, but they have something like that there. So you can keep kind of watching out for positions that and you can go to some companies you might be interested in and just see if they have a generic post, or if you can get on their mailing list, or how you can get involved. Or some of these companies will have monthly like Zoom sessions where they'll talk about their company and stuff like that. And it's really good to register for those Zoom sessions, because then you kind of get your name in their catalog and in their files and stuff like that. Get to know them a little bit better. So, okay. The other thing is Hiva is starting she's one of our TAs here in this class. She's starting a college loop in the Girls Who Code organization. This is a student-run organization, and so he was starting up a group there. So there's some information about that. So if you're a female identifying individual here, you should, and you're interested in that, being involved in that, you should email Heba or talk to Heba, something like that. So, okay, those are the internships available and announcements. So let's talk about options today. So again, Wednesday we went over some of these learning activities. We talked about this population problem and the random number sample area here, and looked at that stuff. And here there's a sample solution to those down at the bottom. And there's videos that walk you through these. So if you want to review some of that stuff, you certainly can. If you just feel really confused on this sort of stuff, I suggest you even go back further and review, because we didn't have class, the learning materials, and walk through maybe this worksheet that we went through, or that I asked you to go through, that just does some real basic things on how arrays are set up there. But if you think you got some of the basics set up for arrays, you might want to start the review problems or the practice problems. I'm going to look at those. So there's a number of practice problems. One, like heart rate. You just have the user enter some heart rates and loop through and print them out there. There's here where we use some random numbers, generate a bunch of random dice and display those. There's golf scores. I think this is the one I'll walk through today. Here, then there's a pizza, deck of cards one, player inventory. And again, these get a little bit harder as we go along. So, and then this week we'll have this pesky tourist stuff. You have to download this starting program and work from there, edit just one method in here. And so we'll talk about that in the second half of class here. So I'm going to start. I'm just going to go to the practice problems here and work on a practice problem. And again, you're free to select any of the practice problems. I'm just going to do the golf one and kind of walk through that. And so just, if you want to do your own one, you can just pick whatever you want and, put on your headphones if you want, or just not listen to me. There. So this is a golf program. So golf is a game where you hit a ball along these, golf courses, and you try to get the ball into the hole at the end, and then you count how many strokes, how many hits it takes you to get from the start to the end, and that's your score. And you want to get a low score. You want to get there. We may not have golf here, but it's very similar to disc golf. I don't know if any of you play disc golf or frisbee golf. UMD has a nice field there. I don't know, is there a disc? I don't know if there's a frisbee golf area in campus. I don't think there is. I think UMD is the closest one. So I'm going to start with this code here. And I'm going to make a new project. It's going to be an ant project, and what am I going to give it some name? Oops. And I was going to take this main routine here and paste that into here. I need to do an import, it looks like. There, okay. So I can run this. It's going to say, welcome to this, we'll calculate your golf score, enter your score on each hole. So it usually takes, 3 to 7 strokes to get them. So I'm just going to enter some random numbers here. It asks for each hole. There, and it tells me, it adds them up and tells me my total score here. And that's what golfers often get. I got a 43 on Saturday. Oh, that was a good score, a bad score here. So we're going to change this. Right now, this works as a for loop, asks what's your score, reads it into the score variable, and adds it to the total. But at the end, we don't have, we don't remember all the inputs. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to be able to say there's something called par, or the kind of the average that you want to get on each hole. So there's this integer, this array of pars here. I'm going to put that in there. And what we'd like to do is store everyone what you enter, and then at the end print out your score on each hole and then what par was, and say, like, it on hole 4 it took you 3 strokes and par was 4 strokes, so you were 1 under par, something like that. We like to be able to print off. So we need to store this stuff in an array. So I'm going to change this. How would I change score so it doesn't just hold one value, but holds a whole bunch of values here? And again, sometimes you have to look this up, may want to go to our textbooks and remind ourselves how we declare an array. So we say the type, then we do square brackets, give it some name, then equals, and say new, and then the type again, and then the size of the array here. So for score here, if I want to make that into an array, I'd say int bracket score. Oops. And I have to do initialization equals new int sub, and there's going to be 9 holes in my golf course. Let's see if that new int 9 for this. Now, when I'm using scores, I can't just say score. I have to say score and then put something in brackets as an array. So I have to reference it this way with some index. And luckily, I have the whole number here, so I can reference this with the whole number. And then each time I'm going to, like here, I can reference the whole number. So now I've basically just turned the score into an array. And that was kind of the first thing here. Change the score variable so it stores an array of 9 integers. When the user enters the score, read it into the new array. Print off the score for each hole along with the total here. So right now I'm just printing off the total. Let's see if this works. So again, it'll ask me values. For the 9 holes. Oh, then it's getting into an error here for this. And my problem here is that I'm going from 1 to 9 here. And an array always starts at 0. So whenever we're doing a loop for an array, we always want to start at 0 and then just go while it's less than the size of the array and do it that way. So our array loop should always start with whatever value starts at 0 and go to less than the size of the array. So it's 9, and 9 is here also. Let's try this again. Now you might notice this time the holes started at hole number 0, and really in golf it doesn't. So there's a difference between what the computer likes and what humans like. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to say I'm going to always print out the hole plus 1. So when I run this, it'll say hole 1 as the first one. So that's the basic idea here, but I haven't used this par and I haven't printed off. I want to print off all the scores when I'm done and how close they are. So how would I print off all the, I've stored all these scores. How do I print them all off for this? So again, that's the first step is print off the score on each hole along with the total. I'm printing out the total. I want to print off the score on each hole. Again, we usually do this with a loop, a for loop. So and again, we have some value. I could use the whole again, or I could just use some other variables. Sometimes we just use an integer counter like index. Sometimes we shorten it and just say I. So I'm just going to use I. So I equals 0. I less than the number of holes, 9. And add 1 to I each time, I plus 1. I can, say I equals I plus 1, 2, whatever I want. So now I have this I variable, this counter variable, and I'm going to print off my whole. How do I print off that whole number? Your score was So I want to print off using the score variable. How do I do that here? So if I just say score, that's going to be a whole array. And that's not going to work. Let's see if I can do this. When we try to print off an array, it prints off the array address actually, and it just turns out to be some weird numbers here. So I don't want to just print off the score. I always have to say score, the array, and then square brackets, and then put the counter, the index in there. So I'm going to put I in there. Now, if you're using something other than I, that's fine. Like if I wanted to use index here, I could do that. I just had to be consistent. So if I use index there, I have to use it here, I have to use it here, and then I use it here. I can do that as well here, but I'm gonna keep it short and just use I think, for this. So now it'll print off the score of each hole, hopefully. So it prints off the score was, and I want to print off not just the score, but par. The score was there, and I want to say, and par for the hole was, and then print off what that was. And so I have another array that I got from here of all the par values. So how do I print that off here? Again, just like before, what I do. I'm gonna, oops, I don't want to do this here. Sorry, I did this in the wrong spot. I want to do that up here. Inside my loop, I want to print off your score, print off score, and par for the hole was, and I'm going to print off par sub I. If I enter some values here, it will tell me on each hole what my score was and what par was for this, and then what my total score was. So now I've got this basically set up here. For this, I've got this printing off par. I can refine it. Maybe I want to print off each hole. Your score for the hole one was here. So maybe I want to add that. Your score for hole. Print off the I. I'm going to add one to it so that it's not zero based. So it says like your score for hole one was 3 and par was 5 and etc. for this. That's our basic use of arrays. Again, we're declaring an array, and we actually get to see two ways of setting up an array. One, where we just say create a new array and it initializes all the zeros. The other one where you initialize it to some values here. So these are both ways of declaring arrays. We use our loop to read in, and here we're using a counter or the loop variable whole, a number. And then we read in each number and store it into scores of whole. And then we add a total up as we go through this. And then we have another loop where we print off all the scores here. Your score for the whole was, and we print off scores of I, because our loop variable is I, and par here. Now, one thing we'll start doing once we get used to this is there are some places where we have what are called kind of magic numbers that appear again and again. What would we have to do to make this not a 9-hole golf course, but as often an 18-hole golf course instead? What would we have to do? Well, 9 appears a number of places here when we declare arrays and in our loops here. So one thing we often do is in our loops, don't hard code in a value, but use the size of the array. So if we're looping through scores, I can say score dot length to do the length of that. And that'll be 9 because that's declared up here. And so down here also, so rather than putting in a number there, I should use the size of the array here. And that will work out. Now, if I ever want to change this, I can just change the size of this array and make it an 18 array. Now, par, I'd have to change that too and type in those numbers. But so this, I'd have to change these 2 lines, but all the rest of the code would work out fine if this were an 18-hole golf course or any size golf course for this.